The sun was beginning its descent over the dusty streets of a bustling African town, casting long shadows on the cracked concrete sidewalks. The air was thick with the sounds of street vendors calling out their wares, children playing football with makeshift balls, and the hum of busy lives. In the midst of this chaos, there was a humble, quiet presence, a cleaner named Amara. Amara was a woman who had known struggle all her life. Orphaned at a young age, she had learned to fend for herself in a world that seemed indifferent to her. She worked tirelessly at a local hotel, cleaning rooms, sweeping floors, and scrubbing toilets, the work that many overlooked but that kept the place running. She lived in a small, humble home made of corrugated iron sheets on the outskirts of town, with no electricity or running water. But what Amara lacked in material wealth, she made up for in kindness and compassion. She always greeted everyone with a warm smile, and her heart, though scarred by hardship, was open to the world. One late afternoon, as Amara finished mopping the lobby floor of the hotel, she noticed him for the first time. A man sitting on the steps, his back against the wall, his clothes ragged, his face worn with exhaustion. He looked out of place, like a stranger who had wandered into a world he didn't belong in. His name was David. David had been homeless for months, moving from one part of the city to another, with no real home, no family, no purpose. He had once been a successful man, someone who had known luxury, the warmth of a family, and the thrill of success. But a series of unfortunate events, including betrayal by those closest to him, had led him down a dark path. Now, he wandered the streets, sleeping on benches, eating scraps from the garbage, and begging for small change to survive. The spark of ambition that once burned bright in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Amara, being the compassionate woman she was, couldn't ignore the sight of the lonely, disheveled man. She approached him, offering him a bottle of water and a sandwich she had packed for herself. David, initially hesitant, took the water, his eyes filled with gratitude. For a moment, he felt like he wasn't invisible. In the midst of his struggles, someone had noticed him, and it meant more than he could say. Amara smiled warmly, her eyes kind and understanding. "You look like you could use a friend," she said, though she didn't expect him to answer. She had learned to keep her distance, not getting too involved with the world's pain. But something about David's silent sorrow tugged at her heart. For the next few weeks, Amara saw David regularly. Every evening, he would sit on the steps of the hotel, his face buried in his hands, lost in thoughts of the life he had once known. And every evening, Amara would offer him a small act of kindness, a meal, a blanket, a few words of encouragement. She learned that he had once been a successful business. But his company had collapsed, and his wife had left him, taking everything. David had lost all that he had ever cared about and had slipped into a life of homelessness, convinced that he deserved nothing better. Amara couldn't help but feel a deep connection to him. She had never known luxury, but she understood the pain of loss. She had lost her parents, and her dreams of a better life seemed as distant as the stars in the sky. But David, with all his pain and history, seemed to have something she didn't, the hope that one day, things could get better. What Amara didn't know, what no one knew, was that David was not just a homeless man. In truth, he was the CEO of a multinational company, a billionaire who had lost everything, not due to his own fault, but because of betrayal and corruption within his own company. He had deliberately chosen this life, retreating from the world he once ruled, disillusioned and heartbroken. An unexpected bond. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Amara and David grew stronger. Though their worlds were drastically different, they found a common language in their shared struggles. Amara spoke of her dreams of a better life, of one day owning her own small business, where she could help others like herself, people who were forgotten by society, those who had no voice. David, in turn, spoke of his past life, of the empire he had built, and of the people who had betrayed him. He had no intention of returning to the world of wealth and power, it had caused him too much pain. But listening to Amara, hearing her talk about her dreams, gave him a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. In a strange way, Amara became his anchor, the one person who saw him not as a failure but as a man who needed healing. And for Amara, David became the example of what could be lost when one let ambition and greed overshadow human connection. She began to see him not just as a man of wealth, but as a man who had been hurt, who had lost everything, and yet still had the strength to survive. One evening, as Amara was leaving the hotel after her shift, she saw David sitting under a tree in the small park across the street. He looked different that day, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He stood as she approached, a smile on his face. "I have something to show you," he said, his voice a bit more hopeful than usual. Amara raised an eyebrow, but curiosity got the better of her. "What is it?" David motioned for her to follow him. He led her to a small cafe on the corner of the street. It wasn't much, just a small, humble place where local workers gathered for coffee and conversation, but for David, it was a symbol of something he had once lost, a reminder that the simple joys of life were often the most important. As they sat and talked, David revealed the truth to her. He was not just a homeless man. He had once been the CEO of a massive company, but his life had fallen apart. The betrayal had shattered him, and he had retreated into the shadows of the world, hoping that by disappearing, he could escape the pain. Amara listened, her heart heavy with sympathy. She had always known there was more to David than met the eye, but hearing the full story shook her. And though she was surprised, she wasn't frightened or put off. Instead, she admired his vulnerability, his courage in sharing his truth. "What will you do now?" Amara asked softly. David smiled, his eyes gleaming with a new sense of purpose. "I don't know yet. But for the first time in a long while, I think I might finally be ready to rebuild, not my empire, but my life." As the weeks passed, David began to change. The man who had once wandered aimlessly, lost in his own despair, now started to take small steps toward healing. With Amara's encouragement, he reached out to a few of his old contacts, trying to rebuild the pieces of his life. But he did so with a new perspective, one focused not on wealth or power, but on the value of relationships and the importance of community. Amara, too, was growing in her own way. She had always dreamed of a better life, but now she had the courage to pursue those dreams with conviction. She applied for a small loan to start a cleaning business of her own, hoping to create a better future for herself and others like her. And with David's support, both emotional and financial, she slowly began to see that her dreams weren't as distant as they once seemed. One day, as they sat on the steps outside the hotel, Amara asked David a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you regret leaving everything behind?" David looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "No," he said softly. "I don't regret it. I lost everything, but in doing so, I found something far more valuable, peace. And sometimes, that's all we need." The truth revealed. As time passed, Amara and David's bond deepened. Their connection was no longer just one of compassion but had evolved into something far more profound, a friendship that transcended the boundaries of social class, wealth, and circumstance. They spent hours together, talking about life, love, and the dreams they once had but had long buried. Their conversations were filled with laughter, shared silences, and a mutual understanding that only two people who had been through hardship could have. Amara's business was slowly taking shape. She had started with small jobs, cleaning houses for people in the neighborhood, doing laundry for local shops. She was building her reputation, one client at a time. Her dream of helping others, of creating jobs and giving people a chance at a better life, was becoming more than just a distant thought. It was a reality she could see, feel, and almost touch. David, on the other hand, was still struggling with his past. Despite the progress he had made, there were moments when the weight of his losses seemed unbearable. He had reached out to a few of his former colleagues, but many of them had turned their backs on him, seeing him only as a shadow of the man he once was. He had tried to rebuild his business empire, but something inside him kept holding him back. It wasn't the fear of failure that kept him away, it was the fear of what that success might bring, the temptation to fall back into the world of greed and power, the very world that had caused his downfall. But then, one day, something changed. David received a letter that would alter the course of his life forever. It was from a lawyer representing his former business partners, the ones who had betrayed him and caused the downfall of his company. The letter stated that they had found a way to return a portion of the company's assets to him, a settlement that would allow him to regain control of his wealth and position. David's first reaction was one of disbelief. After everything he had been through, after losing everything, the idea of regaining his old life was both exhilarating and terrifying. He went to Amara to share the news. "I don't know what to do," David confessed, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "Part of me wants to take it, to go back to the life I had. But another part of me is afraid. I've seen what that life does to people. I've seen how it destroys them." Amara listened quietly, her expression calm. She could see the conflict in David's eyes, the battle between his past and the man he had become. "You've come so far," Amara said softly. "I've seen you change. You found peace, David. You found something far more valuable than all the money in the world. I don't think the answer is in what you once had, but in what you have now, your heart, your kindness, your willingness to help others." David was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. He had spent so much of his life chasing after success, after wealth, after status. But now, with Amara's words echoing in his mind, he realized that the real success wasn't in those things at all. It was in the relationships he had built, the people he had helped, and the inner peace he had found. That night, David made a decision that would forever change the direction of his life. He declined the settlement. He chose not to return to the world he once knew. Instead, he chose to remain in the life he had built with Amara, a life grounded in simplicity, humility, and service to others. A new chapter. David's decision to decline the settlement was met with mixed reactions. Some of his old contacts, those who had once been his friends and allies, were furious with him. They saw his decision as foolish, as a betrayal of the life they had once shared. But David knew that his choice was the right one. He had found something far more valuable than riches. He had found love, friendship, and purpose. Amara, too, had grown in ways she never imagined. Her business was flourishing, and she had become a respected figure in her community. People came to her for advice, for help, and for the hope that one day they, too, could rise above their circumstances. She had created jobs for others, and she had built a small network of women who worked together to clean homes, provide services, and support each other. One afternoon they walked together through the town. David stopped and looked at Amara with a smile. "You've done more than just build a business, Amara," he said. "You've built a community. You've given people something they never had, hope. And in doing so, you've given me something I never thought I would find again, a reason to live." Amara blushed, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had never expected this, never imagined that a simple act of kindness would lead to such a profound change in both their lives. But here they were, standing together, side by side, building a future that was bright and full of promise. David took her hand, his grip strong and steady. "I've learned a lot from you, Amara. You've taught me that it's not what we have that defines us, but what we give." Amara smiled, her eyes sparkling. "And you've taught me that it's never too late to start over." As they walked through the streets, surrounded by the hum of life, David and Amara knew that their journey was far from over. They had both faced the darkness and come out stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to make a difference. Together, they would continue to build, not just a business, but a life that was grounded in love, kindness, and the belief that no matter where you come from, you can always rise above your circumstances. The lesson learned. As the story draws to a close, the lesson becomes clear. True wealth is not measured by the number of zeros on a paycheck or the size of a mansion, but by the relationships we build and the impact we have on others. In a world that often values success above all else, Amara and David's story serves as a powerful reminder that the greatest treasures are often found in the simplest things: love, kindness, and the courage to start over. The moral of the story is simple, yet profound. No matter how far we fall, there is always a way to rise again. We may not always control our circumstances, but we always have the power to choose how we respond. And in choosing to give rather than take, we discover that the greatest riches lie not in what we accumulate, but in the love and goodwill we share with others. In the end, Amara and David found not just redemption, but a life that was far more fulfilling than any riches could have ever provided. They found peace, purpose, and, most importantly, each other. And that, in itself, was the true definition of success. Months passed, and the rhythm of life continued. Amara's business continued to grow, and David, though no longer living in the shadows of his past, found himself increasingly involved in her work. What started as a simple friendship was now a partnership. He used his skills, gained from his years of business experience, to help Amara scale her cleaning business and make it a sustainable operation. Together, they made plans to expand, not just in their small town, but beyond it, to nearby villages and neighboring cities. They wanted to offer not just employment, but also educational opportunities, helping young people learn valuable skills they could use to better their own lives. One afternoon, as Amara and David sat together in the small office above her new cleaning business, a thought struck David. He was watching her organize a schedule for the team of cleaners she had hired when a familiar face walked into the room. It was an old friend from his past life. She looked a little different, a bit more polished, perhaps, but it was unmistakably her. "David," the woman called, her voice trembling with surprise. David stood up, his face a mix of emotions. The last time he had seen Linda was years ago when he was on top of the world, the CEO of his own company. She had been one of the people who had helped him build his empire, but she was also one of the people who had betrayed him. "Linda," David said, his voice betraying no emotion. "What brings you here?" Linda hesitated before speaking, her eyes glancing nervously at Amara. "I heard you were back in town. I just wanted to see how you were doing. I heard you had changed." Amara, sensing the tension in the air, stood up slowly and excused herself from the room. She knew that this was something David had to deal with on his own. David and Linda sat in silence for a while. Finally, Linda spoke, her voice quiet and almost apologetic. "I've heard about the business you're running now. I wanted to tell you. I'm sorry. I know I was part of the reason everything fell apart for you. I was blinded by ambition and greed, and I lost sight of what really mattered." David took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "You weren't the only one. I played my part, too. I didn't see the signs. I didn't protect my people, and I didn't protect myself. But I've learned, Linda. I've learned that there's more to life than just power and wealth." Linda's eyes softened. "I know. I lost everything when I lost your trust. I thought that if I could just get ahead, I could fix everything. But in the end, it only made things worse." David nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "You and I were both lost, Linda. I think we're still both trying to find our way, but we've got to let go of the past if we want to move forward." For a moment, it seemed as though Linda was about to speak again, but she only nodded, standing up to leave. "I hope you find what you're looking for, David. I really do." As Linda walked out, Amara returned to the office, having given them the space they needed. She looked at David with a raised eyebrow, a question in her eyes. "That was unexpected," David said with a slight chuckle. "A part of my past came knocking, and I think it's finally time to close that chapter for good." Amara smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. It sounds like you found peace. David nodded slowly. I think I have. But it's not just the past I'm letting go of. It's also the fear of moving forward. I was always scared to rebuild, to trust again. But with you, I think I'm ready for the next step. It's time to build something together, not just for myself, but for others. Amara, deeply moved by his words, reached out and took his hand. Together, she echoed. We'll build something worth fighting for. As the seasons changed, so did their plans. Amara and David decided to expand their business beyond the local community. Their focus was not only on providing jobs but on empowering others. They began to train young people in skills like cleaning, customer service, and entrepreneurship. Amara's dream of creating a positive impact in the lives of others was becoming a reality, and David was by her side every step of the way. David's past life, full of luxury and opulence, seemed a distant memory now. Instead, he found joy in the simple things, like watching the children of the local community attend the workshops they offered or seeing the smiles of the workers who now had stable incomes. But with every success, there came challenges. There were always people who would try to undermine their efforts, people who were threatened by change or who believed that the old ways of doing things were the only ways. Amara and David knew they would face opposition, but they were prepared. Together, they had built a foundation of trust, and nothing could break it. One day, as they sat together after a long day's work, David turned to Amara with a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, he said, I've been thinking about what we've built. This business, this life, it's not just about cleaning. It's about so much more. It's about helping people see that they are worthy of success, that no matter where they come from, they can rise up. Amara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. That's exactly it. It's about creating opportunities, giving people the tools to change their lives. We may have started small, but together, we've made a big difference. David's eyes shone with a quiet determination. And we'll keep making that difference. Together. As Amara and David's business flourished, they began to face challenges that tested their resolve. The small, humble town they had started in was expanding, and so were their ambitions. While they had gained the trust and admiration of the local community, the larger cities were a different story. They encountered bureaucratic obstacles, skeptical investors, and an increasing demand for their services that they struggled to meet. But despite the difficulties, Amara and David stood firm, determined to keep their vision alive. One day, a wealthy businessman from the city came to visit them. He was intrigued by their story, the tale of a homeless man who had chosen to build a new life and a cleaner who had started from nothing but who now provided jobs and opportunities for others. His name was Samuel, and he offered them a deal that sounded too good to ignore. You've built something remarkable here, Samuel said one afternoon, sitting across from Amara and David in their small office. I can help you take this to the next level. I have the resources, the connections. Together, we can expand your business into the city and beyond. The offer was tempting. Samuel was offering them a chance at the kind of success that they had never dreamed of. But both Amara and David were cautious. They had worked hard to build what they had, and the thought of giving up even a fraction of control filled them with unease. David leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He was used to being the one who had everything. Wealth, influence, and power. He had known the high life, and he had walked away from it. But this was different. The idea of bringing someone like Samuel into their world, someone who saw business only in terms of profit, didn't sit right with him. Amara, sensing his unease, spoke up. We appreciate your offer, Samuel. But we've built this business with our own hands, with our own values. We've grown slowly, steadily, and we've made sure that everyone involved shares those values. If we bring you in, what happens to that? Samuel's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. I understand your hesitation. But think about it. With my help, you won't have to compromise your values. You'll just have more resources to reach more people. Think about how many lives you can change." David and Amara exchanged a glance. It was a tempting offer, one that promised them the chance to make a far-reaching impact. But they both knew that with success came the potential to lose control, to become entangled in a world they had fought so hard to escape. The question was, would they be able to stay true to themselves in a world that often demanded compromise? The choice. In the days that followed, Amara and David discussed Samuel's offer in private, weighing the pros and cons. They knew that they were standing at a crossroads, and the decision they made now would shape their future forever. David, who had once lost everything, was deeply conflicted. He had learned the hard way that the pursuit of wealth could cloud one's judgment, that power could corrupt the purest of intentions. But the idea of reaching more people, of helping more communities, also called to him. He spent the night walking the streets of the town, reflecting on his journey, the path that had brought him from the heights of success to the depths of despair, and finally to this moment. He thought about Amara, her strength, her integrity, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. He realized that it was her that had kept him grounded, reminding him of what truly mattered. The next morning, as the sun rose over the town, David sat with Amara in their small office. "I've thought about it," he said, his voice steady. "I've realized that what we've built is worth more than any deal. I don't want to risk losing what we've created for the sake of more money or more power." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I feel the same way. We've come this far because we've stayed true to our mission, to help others, to create opportunities, and to build a life that reflects who we are. I don't want to change that." Together, they made the decision. They would not take Samuel's offer. Instead, they would continue to grow their business on their own terms, at their own pace. It wouldn't be easy, but they were prepared to face the challenges ahead. As Samuel left their office, disappointed by their refusal, David and Amara stood together, knowing that their choice was the right one. They had resisted the temptation of quick success and had chosen instead to stay true to their values. And that, to them, was worth more than anything money could buy. The reward of integrity. Months turned into years, and Amara and David's business continued to thrive. Though the challenges they faced were many, they never wavered in their commitment to their mission. They expanded their services, hired more employees, and reached new communities. And with every step forward, they remained grounded in the belief that success should be measured not by profit, but by the impact they had on the lives of others. Their story spread far and wide. A story of redemption, of rebuilding from the ground up, and of staying true to one's values in a world that often demanded compromise. David, once a man who had everything and lost it all, had found something far more valuable than wealth. He had found purpose. Amara, the humble cleaner who had dreamed of a better life, had created that life and more, not just for herself, but for countless others. And so, as the years passed, Amara and David continued their work, not because they sought recognition or glory, but because they knew that the true reward was in the lives they touched, the people they uplifted, and the communities they helped build. They never forgot the lesson they had learned, that true success was not about what you had, but about what you gave. One day, as David and Amara sat together on the steps of their small office, watching the sun set over the horizon, they reflected on their journey. They had come so far from where they had started, from the streets, from their struggles, from the pain of loss. They had created something beautiful, something lasting. Amara turned to David, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We've built something special, haven't we?" David smiled, his heart full. "Yes, we have. And we're just getting started." As the night fell, and the stars began to shine in the clear sky above them, they knew that the future held endless possibilities. Together, they had created not just a business, but a legacy of love, hope, and integrity. And so, their story continued, one step at a time, as they built a future that was brighter than anything they could have ever imagined. The true value of life is not measured by the wealth we accumulate or the power we wield, but by the relationships we nurture, the kindness we offer, and the positive impact we have on the world around us. While ambition and success are important, they should never come at the cost of our values or integrity. In the end, the most meaningful achievements are those that uplift others, create opportunities, and foster genuine human connection. Lessons of life. 1. Success is not defined by wealth alone. While money can provide comfort, it's not the ultimate measure of success. True success is found in the ability to positively influence the lives of others, in personal growth, and in staying true to one's values. 2. Integrity is priceless. In the face of temptation and the allure of wealth and power, staying true to your principles is the greatest form of success. Integrity may not always lead to immediate rewards, but it ensures that the rewards you do achieve are worthwhile and meaningful. 3. Failure is a stepping stone. David's journey from success to failure and back again demonstrates that failure is not the end, but rather an opportunity for growth. Life's challenges teach us valuable lessons and push us to rebuild stronger and wiser. Kindness has the power to transform. Amara's simple acts of kindness towards David sparked a change in both their lives. In a world that often overlooks the struggling and the disadvantaged, kindness is a powerful force that can heal, rebuild, and inspire. Value of community and relationships. Amara's journey illustrates the importance of community and human connection. Building relationships based on trust, mutual respect, and shared values leads to greater fulfillment and success than individual accomplishments ever could. Letting go of the past is essential for growth. David had to let go of his past, including the hurt, anger, and disappointment, to truly begin his journey of healing and rebuilding. Holding on to past mistakes or regrets only holds us back from moving forward. Purpose over profit. Both Amara and David's journey emphasize that when you pursue a purpose greater than yourself, everything else falls into place. Profit may come, but it should always be secondary to the deeper goal of helping others and contributing positively to society. Courage to change. Both characters demonstrated incredible courage in their willingness to change. David had to walk away from everything he knew, and Amara had to take the risk of building something from scratch. Change can be daunting, but it often leads to greater rewards than remaining stagnant. Building from the ground up takes time, but it's worth it. Amara and David's slow but steady journey taught them patience. Building a solid foundation takes time, and the rewards are far greater when done with care and persistence. Love and support are the pillars of strength. In the end, it was not their individual efforts that led to success, but the love and support they shared for one another. Life's greatest strength comes from knowing that you have someone to stand by you, no matter the circumstances. Please don't forget to tell us where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't also forget to subscribe to our channel.